I'm Candace Perry, 32, a resident physician in Bozeman, Montana. For 4 years, I sent my parents $2,000 each month. Rent, medical bills, car repairs, anything they needed. That added up to $24,000 a year, straight from my paycheck, just to keep them comfortable. But on my wedding day, they didn't show up. No call, no text, no excuse. My heart raced as I called, and my mom snapped, "Don't bother us." Those words hit like a slap. My hands trembled as I hung up. I stood frozen in the dressing room, tears streaming down, then took a deep breath and made a decision I never thought I'd make. 30 minutes later, my phone blew up. My dad's voice cracked as he begged me to change my mind. I didn't. I had spent years believing family meant sacrifice. I worked overtime, skipped trips, and gave up things I wanted, all to fund their emergencies. They never once said thank you. My husband often asked, "Why do you let them take advantage of you?" I never had an answer. But standing there in my wedding gown, my mom's cold words echoing in my head, I finally realized I was drained from carrying it all. That was the moment I chose to stop. If you've ever had to choose yourself over family expectations, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. After that day, I couldn't shake the weight of those 4 years. Every month, I sent $2,000 to my parents directly from my paycheck. Their rent in Bozeman, Montana was $700 due on the 1st, and I covered it without fail. When my mom's back pain flared up, I paid for her physical therapy, $500 a session, plus her prescriptions. Their old sedan broke down twice a year, alternator issues, you name it, and I paid another $300 each time. I even set up their internet and cable thinking it would make their lives easier. But no matter how much I gave, they never expressed gratitude. Not once. They'd send a curt, money received text or call with another sob story, and I'd send more as if it were my duty. They acted like I owed them. My dad would call, voice flat, saying their water bill was late again, as if I should already know. My mom would hint at new expenses, never explaining, just expecting me to fix it. I'd sit at my laptop after a long hospital shift, transferring funds, feeling the squeeze in my own budget. I cut back on dinners out, skipped new clothes, worked extra hours to make it all fit. They didn't care. To them, I was the dependable one, the daughter who'd always come through, no questions asked. It wasn't appreciation they gave me. It was silence. My sister Brooke was a different story. At 28, she was a rising real estate agent selling million-dollar homes in Bozeman's booming market. My parents couldn't stop bragging about her. Brooke closed another deal, my mom would say over dinner, eyes glowing. She's going places. Meanwhile, I was the one paying their bills, but my name rarely came up. Brooke would sweep into their apartment with coffee or pastries, playing the perfect daughter while I sat at home wiring money. She never offered to help, not a dime. Once I saw her pull up in a brand new SUV, and my parents clapped like she'd won a medal. I drove a 10-year-old Corolla. Years ago, I tried to talk to them. After a brutal shift, I called my dad, voice trembling, and asked why they never acknowledged what I did. He brushed it off. "You're doing fine, aren't you? We need it more." My mom chimed in, "Brooke's building her career. You're the stable one." Stable, like I was a machine, not their daughter. I hung up, chest tight, but I kept sending money. I told myself they'd get back on their feet, that it was only temporary. 4 years later, I was still their bank. My husband Sean saw it long before I did. He'd watch me stress over their latest emergency, jaw clenched. "Why do you let them treat you this way?" he'd ask, voice low, like he didn't want to push too hard. I'd dodge the question, mumbling something about family loyalty, but his words stuck. My friend Gloria, a lawyer in town, was more direct over coffee. She'd lean in, eyes sharp. "They're using you, Candace. When's the last time they even asked how you're doing?" I couldn't answer. I'd changed the subject, but her question haunted me, piling onto the doubts already growing. It wasn't just their words. It was the small moments that cut deep. Like when my mom called asking for an extra $1,000 for a specialist she wouldn't name. I was already stretched thin, working extra shifts to cover my own rent. I asked for details and she snapped, "Why don't you trust us?" I sent the money anyway, hating myself for it. Another time, my dad needed new tires for their car. I paid, but when I visited, Brooke was there flaunting her new designer bag. They didn't need me, they wanted my money. The guilt kept me chained. Growing up, my parents drilled into me that family always comes first, no matter what. If I ever stopped helping, I'd be the bad daughter, the one who turned her back on them. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if I was wrong for feeling used. Sean would hold me, whispering that I deserved better, but I couldn't let go. I kept convincing myself that if I gave just a little more, they'd finally see me, but they never did. And that weight, that quiet ache, was all I had to show for it. The guilt still lingered, but I had bigger things ahead. My wedding day was supposed to be perfect. Sean and I had spent months planning, picking every detail for our small ceremony at a community hall in Bozeman, Montana. We rented the cozy venue with wooden beams and soft lighting, and I handled everything: the caterer, the flowers, even the playlist. I sent invitations to my parents weeks in advance, called to confirm they'd come, even offered to cover their gas for the short drive across town. They promised they'd be there. My dad's voice was steady over the phone, my mom adding quickly, "Of course." I believed them. I wanted to believe them. So, I stood at the altar in a white dress that had cost half my savings, scanning the crowd for their faces. But they never showed. The ceremony went on. Sean's vows made me laugh through tears, and our friends cheered when we kissed. But every few minutes, my eyes darted toward the door. Nothing. By the time we cut the cake, my stomach was in knots. I slipped away into the hallway, dialing my mom's number with trembling fingers. She answered on the third ring. "Don't bother us," she said sharply, as if I'd interrupted something important. I froze, the phone shaking in my hand. "Mom, it's my wedding," I managed to say, but the line went dead. I stood there, veil slipping, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Those 3 words burned more than their absence, more than anything. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something colder took over, a sharp, icy anger I'd never felt before. I marched back into the reception, found my laptop in the bridal suite, and logged into every account connected to them. Their rent autopay, canceled. Utility bills in my name, disconnected. The credit card they used for groceries, frozen. I called their landlord, gave him their number, and told him I was done. It took less than an hour to unwind 4 years of sacrifice. Sean found me, his tie loosened, concern in his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked softly. I told him what my mom had said, my voice shaking but steady. He pulled me close, promising we'd figure it out. But deep down, I knew what I'd done was final. The next morning, a letter arrived at our door. Not a call, not a text. A handwritten note slipped under the frame. My mom's slanted cursive filled the page, words dripping with venom. "You think you can cut us off? You'll regret this, Candace. We'll make sure of it." It wasn't a plea, it was a threat. Vague but heavy, hinting at something darker. I read it twice, my hands clenching the paper, heart pounding with rage and disbelief. They hadn't just missed my wedding. They were ready to punish me for it. I showed Sean, and his face hardened. "This isn't right," he said, voice low. "We need to do something." I couldn't hold it in anymore. I drove to my grandmother's house. Lillian, the one person who'd always seen through my parents. She opened the door, silver hair pulled back, eyes sharp even at 70. I poured everything out. Their absence, the call, the letter. Lillian's face tightened with every word. "They've gone too far," she said, voice like steel. Without another word, she grabbed her coat and drove straight to my parents' apartment, a few miles away in a rundown complex. I followed, heart racing, unsure what she'd do. Lillian didn't knock. She stood outside their door, voice echoing through the parking lot. "Nancy, you should be ashamed," she shouted, loud enough for neighbors to peek through their blinds. "You missed your daughter's wedding and now you threaten her? You're no mother." My mom opened the door, face red, stammering excuses, but Lillian didn't stop. "You've taken her money, her time, her heart, and given nothing back. I'm done watching you hurt her." Neighbors gathered, whispering as my mom shrank in the doorway. Gerald appeared behind her, silent, eyes averted. Lillian turned to me, her expression fierce. "You did the right thing, Candace. Don't let them pull you back in." I stood there, anger mixing with strange relief. For the first time, someone had said it out loud. They didn't deserve me. Lillian's words echoed in my mind, drowning out the guilt I'd carried for years. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was done letting them win. A few days after she confronted my parents, I got a call from my bank in Bozeman. The teller's voice was hesitant as she explained someone had tried to access one of my old checking accounts, the same one I'd used to pay my parents' bills years ago. They'd tried to withdraw $2,000, claiming it was an authorized transfer. The bank caught it immediately. My name was still on the account, but the ID didn't match. I knew right away it was either my dad, Gerald, or my mom, Nancy. They'd once had access back when I sent money every month. I'd closed that account after the wedding, but they must have thought they could still sneak in. The teller confirmed the attempt had been denied, and a cold knot twisted in my stomach. They weren't just angry anymore, they were desperate. That same evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide your secrets forever, Candace. Pay up or everyone will know." My heart sank as I read it, the words blurring on the screen. Secrets. I didn't have any, or at least not the kind they could use. But the threat felt real, heavy, like a shadow inching closer. I showed the message to Sean as we sat in our living room. His face darkened, jaw tight. "This is harassment," he said, voice low but furious. "They're trying to scare you." I nodded, but my hands were shaking. What were they planning? How far would they go? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't stop spinning, the message looping again and again, each word sharper than before. I didn't know what secrets they meant, but the thought of them digging through my life, twisting something to hurt me, made my chest tighten. I thought about calling them, demanding answers, but I knew they'd deny it or spin another lie. Instead, I texted Gloria. By morning, she was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, eyes scanning the message I'd forwarded. "This is serious, Candace," she said, her tone calm but firm. "They've crossed a line. We need to document this and start a legal paper trail." Relief and dread collided in my chest. Legal action meant escalation, but doing nothing felt worse. Gloria laid everything out clearly. File a police report for the attempted withdrawal and the threatening text, then pursue a restraining order if it continued. "You need to protect yourself," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "They're not just asking for money. They're trying to control you." Gloria's words hit hard. I nodded, my stomach twisting. The thought of taking my own parents to court felt unreal, like betraying everything I'd ever been taught about loyalty and family. But Gloria was right. They weren't acting like family anymore. They were acting like people who'd stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Sean sat beside me, his hand steady on mine. "We're with you," he said. "Whatever it takes." As we talked, I realized I had to confess something I'd kept hidden. "There's something you both need to know," I said quietly. Taking a deep breath, I told them about my secret savings account. For 4 years, I'd been setting aside $200 a month, a small cushion I'd built for security. It had grown to $20,000, safely tucked away in a separate bank, untouched. I'd never mentioned it to my parents, not after the way they treated my money like it was theirs. Sean's eyes widened. "You've been saving that while paying them?" he asked, a mix of disbelief and pride in his tone. Gloria nodded, her expression sharp. "Good. That's yours, and we'll make sure they can't touch it." I explained how I'd opened the account during my first year as a resident, scraping together whatever I could after meeting their endless demands. It was my safety net, my quiet assurance that I'd be okay if everything fell apart. Keeping it secret had been my only way to protect it. But now, with their threats hanging over me, I couldn't help but wonder, did they somehow know? Was that the secret they mentioned, or were they bluffing, hoping to scare me into paying again? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but sharing the truth with Sean and Gloria lifted a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. They didn't judge me. They understood. Gloria moved fast. She drafted a letter to the bank requesting a full report of the attempted withdrawal and began compiling evidence: the threatening text, the call log, even the venomous letter my mom had sent after the wedding. "We'll build a case," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "If they try anything else, we'll be ready." I watched her work, grateful yet overwhelmed. The idea that my own parents had pushed me to this point felt unreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. But I wasn't backing down. Their manipulation, their greed, it had gone too far. That night, Sean stayed up with me as we mapped out our next steps. We changed every password, added two-factor authentication, and combed through my credit report for anything suspicious. Each step felt like locking a door they'd left open for years. I was scared, not just of what they might do, but of what this meant for everything I'd believed about family. Still, as I looked at Sean's calm strength and thought of Gloria's fierce loyalty, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I'd spent years giving my parents everything. Now I was finally ready to fight for myself. A week after the threatening text, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in years. It was my Uncle Stuart, my dad's younger brother, calling from his home in Missoula. His voice was heavy, burdened. "Candace, we need to talk about your grandparents' estate," he said. I froze, my mind racing. My grandparents had passed away years ago. I thought there was nothing left to discuss. But then Stuart dropped a bombshell. They'd left behind a trust fund of $100,000 meant for Brooke and me to split evenly. My dad, Gerald, had been the executor, but he'd never told us. Not a word. I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse thundering. "How did you find out?" I asked. Stuart explained that while cleaning his attic, he'd found a box of old family documents. Inside was a copy of my grandparents' will, naming Brooke and me as beneficiaries. There was also a letter from my grandmother urging us to use the money for our futures: college, a home, a fresh start. Stuart said he'd called the trust bank to check on it, only to learn that 2 years ago, Gerald had withdrawn $10,000, claiming it was for family expenses. The bank's records showed he'd forged both my signature and Brooke's to get it. I felt nauseous, my stomach twisting in disbelief. My own father had stolen from me, from us, and kept it buried. Stuart promised to send me the documents. By the next day, a package arrived at my house in Bozeman, packed with the will, my grandmother's letter, and the bank statements showing the withdrawal. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the pages, my hands trembling. The letter was in her careful cursive, filled with love and faith in our future. But Gerald had destroyed that trust. He'd taken $10,000, money meant for my future, and spent it on who knows what. I called Gloria, my friend and lawyer, and showed her everything. Her eyes hardened as she scanned the bank papers. "This is fraud," she said, her tone sharp and decisive. "We'll add this to the legal case." Sean, my husband, sat beside me, his expression tight with anger. "They didn't just lie, they stole from you," he said. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Shock slowly turned into rage the more I thought about it. For years, I'd sent them money, believing they were struggling, while they'd been sitting on a secret trust fund. They'd let me drain my savings, work overtime, and worry about their bills, all while hiding money that was rightfully mine. I wanted to drive to their apartment, pound on their door, and demand the truth. But before I could, my sister Brooke showed up unannounced. She pulled into my driveway in her shiny SUV, her face tense, her usual confidence dimmed. I let her in, my guard already up. This wasn't a casual visit. Brooke sat stiffly on my couch, barely meeting my eyes. "You need to start helping Mom and Dad again," she said, her voice low but insistent. "They're in trouble without your money." I stared at her, my jaw tight. She didn't know about the trust fund yet. I hadn't told her, but her words hit like a slap. "They need it, Candace. You can't just abandon them." I took a slow breath, forcing calm into my voice. "Brooke, they've been lying to us. There's a trust fund, $100,000 from Grandma and Grandpa. Dad hid it and stole $10,000 by forging our names." Her eyes widened, but she shook her head. "That's not true." "They wouldn't do that." I handed her the documents, the will, the letter, the bank statements. She read them silently, her hands trembling. When she finally looked up, her expression had hardened. "Even if it's true, they still need help," she said. "You're the one with the stable job. Just send them money again." A wave of anger surged through me, hotter than anything I'd felt before. "No," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I'm done. They stole from us, Brooke. They don't deserve a dime." She stood abruptly, her face flushed. "You're so selfish," she snapped, storming out and slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy. Sean wrapped an arm around me, but I could barely feel it. Brooke's words stung, not because they were true, but because she'd chosen their side even after seeing the evidence. I'd spent years trying to hold this family together, but now I saw it clearly. They weren't my family anymore. The ache in my chest deepened, but I pushed it aside. Gloria and I decided it was time to make things official. We drafted a legal notice, a formal declaration that I was permanently ending all financial support to my parents. Gloria's firm detailed everything: the years of payments, their attempts to access my accounts, the forged signatures on the trust fund. We sent it certified mail to their Bozeman apartment, with copies to the bank and police for the growing case file. It felt like drawing a final line in the sand, one I would never cross again. My heart pounded as I signed my name, but there was no going back. A few days later, I received a frantic call from Lillian. Her voice was shaking with anger. "They were here, Candace," she said. "Your parents came to my house and went through your things." I raced over, my hands gripping the wheel, my thoughts spinning. Lillian lived in a small house on the edge of town where I'd stored some old boxes: books, clothes, childhood keepsakes. When I arrived, the living room was chaos. Drawers yanked open, papers scattered across the floor. My old journals, filled with teenage thoughts, were gone. A photo album with pictures of me and my grandparents was missing, too. Lillian said she'd caught Gerald and Nancy rummaging through the boxes when she got home from the store. "They didn't even try to hide it," she said, her eyes blazing. "They just left when I walked in." A wave of violation hit me like ice. They'd reached into my past and torn it apart. Those journals weren't worth money, but they were mine. Private. The photos were priceless memories of summers with my grandparents before everything went wrong. I called Gloria immediately, my voice shaking. She was furious but composed, her legal instincts already turning. "This is theft," she said firmly. "We'll add it to the police report." "They're escalating, Candace, but we're stronger." Sean stood beside me, his hand steady on my shoulder. "They can't keep doing this," he said quietly but with conviction. And this time I believed him. I nodded, but the air felt heavy, suffocating. What were they searching for? And why take my things? That evening, Brooke called, her voice trembling. I braced myself for another fight, but this time she sounded different, afraid. "Mom texted me," she said. "She told me to make you start paying again, or they'll make things hard for both of us." My pulse quickened as I asked for details. Brooke forwarded the message. It came from Nancy's number, short and cold. "Tell Candace to send the money, or you'll both regret it." My stomach dropped. They weren't just targeting me now, they were using Brooke as bait. I told her to save the message and stay far away from them. "I'm not giving in," I said firmly, forcing the fear out of my voice. She didn't respond, just hung up, and I couldn't tell if she'd listen. The next morning, I returned to Lillian's to clean up the mess they'd left behind. As I sorted through the scattered papers, I noticed something tucked inside an old book, a small envelope addressed to me in my grandparents' handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter inside was gentle and full of warmth. They'd written that the trust fund was meant to give me and Brooke a future, to ensure we never struggled like they did. Gerald, they said, was only the executor, not the owner, and the money belonged to us alone. It was proof undeniable that the trust was ours. Tears stung my eyes as I clutched the letter. My parents hadn't just stolen money. They'd betrayed my grandparents' last wish. I showed it to Gloria, who read it with sharp focus. "This is gold," she said, her tone fierce. "It backs up everything Stuart told us. We'll use this to finish them." The tension in my chest didn't ease, but something stronger rose in its place. A fire. They'd taken my money, my memories, and now they were threatening my sister. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was standing up for what was right, for the legacy my grandparents meant for me to have. A few days later, Gloria called, her voice urgent. She'd spoken to the bank managing the trust fund, and the update was both relieving and infuriating. The trust still held $90,000. My parents hadn't managed to drain it completely. Gloria had worked with a forensic accountant who uncovered undeniable proof of fraud. Gerald's forged signatures, not just mine and Brooke's, but even my grandmother's, used to take the $10,000 years ago. The bank had frozen the account pending a full investigation, and Gloria was ready to press criminal charges. "This case is airtight," she said, determination blazing in her tone. "They can't escape this one." A shiver ran through me, not just from the betrayal, but from the thought of how they'd react once cornered. I couldn't wait any longer. With Gloria's help, I filed for a restraining order against Gerald and Nancy, covering both me and Sean. We sat in her office filling out the paperwork, my hands steady even as my heart raced. Each line, every forged signature, threatening text, and stolen item felt like another wall going up between me and the people who'd raised me. Sean sat beside me, his presence steady, his voice soft. "You're doing the right thing," he said. I nodded, though the weight of it pressed hard against my chest. "What if they fight back? What if they try to hurt us?" I whispered. That night, Brooke called again, her voice shaking. I expected another defense of our parents, but this time she sounded terrified. "They texted me," she said quickly. "They said if you don't stop the legal stuff, we'll both pay." She forwarded the message, and my heart sank as I read it. "Tell Candace to back off or you'll both face consequences." The number was new, but the venom in Nancy's words was unmistakable. I told Brooke to save it for Gloria's records, but she hesitated, her voice cracking. "They're still our parents," she whispered. "I don't want to hurt them." My jaw tightened, frustration mixed with fear. "They're hurting us, Brooke," I said quietly. "You don't have to choose them." But she hung up before I could say more, and I knew she wasn't ready to let go. The next morning, Lillian called with an update that sent a chill through me. Gerald and Nancy had shown up at her house unannounced, trying to talk their way back into her good graces. They stood on her porch, pleading, insisting they were misunderstood and just needed her help to fix things with me. Lillian never opened the door. "I told them to leave," she said, her voice firm as steel. "I won't let them use me to get to you." I could hear the pain beneath her strength. She loved my father, but she couldn't excuse what he'd done. Her defiance gave me courage, but it also scared me. If they were desperate enough to beg Lillian, what would they try next? That night I lay awake, thoughts spinning. The restraining order was protection, but it felt fragile. I imagined them showing up at the hospital where I worked, cornering me in the parking lot, or worse, going after Sean. Every time fear crept in, I thought of Gloria's sharp resolve. Lillian's unwavering backbone, and Sean's quiet loyalty. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd spent years giving them everything in the name of family. Now I was done bending. They could threaten, beg, or manipulate, but I wasn't turning back. Their desperation was loud, but justice was near. A week after Lillian's refusal, Gloria called with news that made my pulse spike. My parents, Gerald and Nancy, had been arrested at a financial office in Bozeman. They'd tried to open a loan using a fake ID in my name, a pathetic attempt to get around the frozen accounts. Police searched their car and uncovered everything. Copies of the threatening letters they'd sent me, forged documents, even my stolen journals from Lillian's house. Gloria's voice was calm, but I could hear the triumph underneath. "This is it, Candace," she said. "We've got them." My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with relief. Their lies had finally caught up. I went to the police station with Gloria to give my statement. The officer laid out the evidence, each forged signature, every threat in black and white. I filed for a permanent restraining order for me and Sean, and the judge granted it the next day, citing their ongoing harassment and fraud. It felt like a door finally closing on years of manipulation. Sean squeezed my hand as we left the courthouse, pride shining in his eyes. "You did it," he said softly. I nodded, a strange lightness in my chest, though a small ache lingered for what might have been. Days later, I learned Gerald and Nancy had been evicted from their apartment. They'd stopped paying rent months ago, surviving on my money. With no funds and a growing criminal case, their landlord wasted no sympathy. I didn't feel joy at their downfall, just peace. They'd built their lives on deceit, and now they were facing the wreckage. I didn't reach out. I was done carrying their weight. Soon after, Lillian invited me to her house. She sat me down at her kitchen table, her hands steady as ever. From a small velvet box, she took out a delicate silver ring etched with tiny flowers. "This was your great-grandmother's," she said warmly. "It's for you, for the family that truly stands by you." I slipped it on, my throat tightening with emotion. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol of everything I'd reclaimed: love, strength, and the family I'd chosen in Lillian, Sean, and Gloria. When the trust fund was finally released, I received my rightful share, $45,000. After Brooke's portion, Sean and I decided to renovate our small Bozeman home, turning it into something that felt wholly ours. We painted the walls a soft beige, replaced the creaky floors, and planted a garden where I could grow flowers like my grandmother once did. Every nail, every brushstroke felt like a step toward freedom, a life no longer chained to my parents' control. I walked through the finished rooms, pride swelling in my chest. This was mine, earned through resilience. Brooke, however, made her choice. She sent one last text, short and cold. "I'm with Mom and Dad. Don't contact me." It stung, but it didn't surprise me. She'd chosen their chaos over truth. I didn't reply. I let her go, knowing some bonds aren't meant to heal. The silence that followed was heavy, but it brought peace. For the first time, I understood. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who respect you, who lift you up. Setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was survival. I stood taller now, grounded in the love that remained and the strength I'd finally found within myself.